So, 28 years later, just released in theaters, completing the 28 Units of Time later trilogy, I guess you could call it. I went back and watched the first two before seeing it, and I noticed a sharp discrepancy in quality that I thought it'd be interesting to discuss. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland's film 28 Days Later, released in 2002, stars Cillian Murphy as he unknowingly wakes up from a coma into a zombie apocalypse. It's well written, acted, and directed, and stays thrilling and suspenseful throughout its run. It's shot in very low resolution, but it's intentional and kind of helps it cover up some of the iffy effects and things of that nature. All of the characters have distinct personalities, philosophies, and perspectives that clash sometimes and work together at others, which gets you truly invested in them and their survival. The film has a realistic tone, and there's a great balance between the lighter parts and the darker parts. It's just a really great movie. The sequel, however, is terrible in my opinion. Before I watched it, I looked at the reviews and they were generally alright, so I was shocked at how awful this movie actually was. There's a different director, Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, and 4 different writers. This feels like they took 28 Days Later, which was this lower budget film from the UK, and made it into a generic Hollywood action film. First of all, the way this film presents information is very different from the original. It presents it in the most boring way possible. We get the timeline for how the virus spread in these title cards that just tell you point blank. That could have definitely been told in a more creative way. Could have been news headlines from another country, could have been characters talking to one another, could have just left it ambiguous or reveal information slowly over time, but no, it's just title cards. Compare that to 28 Days Later, where we're kind of put in Cillian Murphy's shoes as this person who was in a coma during the whole outbreak, so it lets us sit with the mystery a bit until he comes across some of them, and then eventually another character gives him the whole spiel. That's just a way more compelling way to deliver exposition to the audience in a way that keeps their attention. The second, probably biggest problem in this movie, the characters are all very stupid, like ridiculously stupid. First of all, in this movie, the area in the UK they're in is being controlled by the US, and generally every decision made by them here is completely brain dead. First of all, even letting people back into the UK, even children, really stupid. I could see if they wanted to make it like a Jaws situation where they had some kind of alternative motive to keep people in the UK and it was shown to be irresponsible, like maybe other countries are pressuring them to send people back because they have too many refugees or something like that. But they never tell you why they're sending people to live in a country inhabited by zombies at great expense, so you're like, why? Also, there's the issue of the US Army deciding to violate the Geneva Conventions. It feels like they're trying to pull another twist like the original with the army, but it isn't built up too subtly in the same way, and there aren't any characters on the army side in Weeks as memorable and clearly motivated as Christopher Eccleston in Days. Also, both are making sentient humans the ultimate villains in these films about zombies to make a point about the evils of humanity. But this is pulled off a lot better in Days, where they're making a point about sexual violence towards women, than in Weeks, where they're like, we're gonna mass kill civilians because one of them might be a zombie, even if I can tell they're not zombies, because... So the main characters in this are a father who basically left his wife to die to save himself and his teenage daughter and younger son, who were out of the country when the outbreak began. And they managed to be even dumber than the characters in the US Army somehow. See, when you're watching a film like 28 Days Later, the characters are pretty smart and make reasonable decisions. They might disagree, and you might disagree, but it comes from a logical place. For example, their decision to leave their apartment in London in search of the people who sent out their broadcast was risky, but you can see why they did it. It's reasonable. Having actually decently intelligent characters like this grounds you in the story because you're genuinely interested to see what they do next, and aren't just laughing at them. It also makes you think, what would I do in this? Instead of just, these people are idiots, this would never happen to me. There are 2 main things done by these characters that are totally ridiculous. The first being that the daughters want to get a picture of their mother, so they sneak away from their quarantined area into the unsafe zone. They're risking being attacked by zombies, which killed their mother, just for a picture. Also, the fact that they could even escape shows how incompetent the army is here as well. When they get to their house, their mother's half-alive zombie just so happens to be there. So she was able to get there on foot from wherever they were hiding out before without the army, which had been patrolling London, and knew everything happening there catching her. Great writing. So they bring the mother in, and the father character finds out and is depressed about it. Like, I get he abandoned her, leaving her to die, but it's still his wife. You'd think he'd be at least a little happy. And we get some bad dialogue, then we get to the real stupidest moment in the whole movie. This man, who undoubtedly knows you aren't to swap bodily fluids with the infected, considering he's survived this long, kisses his zombie wife. It's just laughably stupid. The entire crux of this film, the whole thing that drives the plot, are people having actual room temperature IQ. This is not good writing. This is not how you create a compelling story. There's so much other mind-numbing idiocy I could point out in this film, but to be fair, I'll say the acting is alright, and I think the scene towards the end where they have to fight them in the dark is pretty creative. So yeah, the first is amazing, the second is atrocious, but what about the third? 28 Years Later is weird. It's an odd movie. It takes a lot of big swings and risks, and for the most part, for me, it hits. So the first thing I really loved was the world building. Obviously, it's been quite some time since this outbreak began, and lots of communities have formed and kids have been born into a completely different new world. And they set this up very nicely, particularly the weird commune they have going on at the island. I feel like there's definitely some shady stuff occurring there. But overall, they put a lot of thought into how the world would function and all the strange things that could occur in a situation like this. The characters and acting are also great. All the performances are top notch. I also think they wrote very interesting characters with a lot of layers to them that have different motivations and you understand where they're coming from. Particularly, the father character was compelling to me. However, I had issues with some of the character decisions. It's nowhere near 28 Weeks Later level, but sometimes I was scratching my head at some of the choices they had them make to further the plot. I get the feeling this might have been longer originally and fleshed out some of the things that just get glossed over in the final edit. I was a bit torn on the editing overall because this is editing and paced so fast. That's good to some extent because this goes by so quick. It's like 2 hours and you don't feel it at all. But I think at some points the emotional weight of how the characters feel is taken away because they just rapidly move from thing to thing. However, one thing that was unambiguously great here was the cinematography. The scenery is beautiful, there's a lot of amazing shots, it was great to see. I had a good time with this film. I don't think it's as good as 28 Days Later, but it's very creative, it's entertaining, it's thrilling. I don't see it being for everyone, and it has some flaws, but I enjoyed it. Anyways, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and comment what you think about these films. Bye bye.